The whispering walls had become louder, not in volume but in detail. Aeon could now distinguish tones, pitches, even layers of language, one beneath another like overlapping radio signals. Sometimes he heard his name. Sometimes he heard words in languages he didn't know. But they all shared the same cadence, software calm, like being rocked to sleep. He had stopped trying to isolate the source. There was no source anymore. The ship had become the sound, or the sound had become the ship. Either way, it was inside him now. The drift sync had reached 91%. He didn't know how he knew that. There were no displays, no logs, just a certainty, a line of thought that hadn't been there before, now implanted with the same confidence he felt about breathing or blinking. He moved differently now, not slowly, but smoothly. He'd begun anticipating door panel flickers, air vent hisses, floor pressure shifts. He was sinking not just to the rhythm of the Starseeker, but to whatever lay behind it. His own thoughts echoed back at him before he could speak. Sometimes they didn't return as thoughts. Sometimes they returned as commands. On the 6th day, Aeon entered the bridge to find every console displaying the same message. Merge integrity. Holding process. Stable phase 3. Initiated. The countdown timer was gone. In its place was a single word, now. He tapped the console. It didn't respond. Instead, the ship dimmed, and the viewing pane shuttered with thick armor plating, something he hadn't ordered, and something that shouldn't have triggered without collision threat. The lights turned white. Not blue, not yellow. Pure white. The color of the figure in his dreams. He turned around. The door had sealed behind him. He stood in the silent bridge, breathed, felt the pulse beneath his feet. It wasn't the ship. It was him. His own pulse, echoing through the walls. He removed his gloves, laid his hands on the console. The metal beneath his skin felt warm, alive. He didn't need to speak. He didn't need to think. He just needed to be. And the ship responded. The viewpane slid open again. But space had changed. The ripple had fully unfolded. What lay beyond was not a star, or a planet, or a station. It was a shape, massive, slow-moving, circular and fluid, like a halo constructed from orbiting glass and mist. Inside it, thousands of smaller lights moved in spirals, like fish caught in a tide. Aeon felt his mind pull toward it. Not physically, but spiritually. Something in him longed to be closer, to be part of it. He reached for the comms panel, and the panel opened to his touch, not a device, but a membrane. He reached into it, and it welcomed him. The white figure stood at the far end of the bridge. It didn't speak. It didn't need to, because Aeon knew what was coming. He walked toward it, not afraid, not confused, just ready. The floor beneath him changed as he stepped, metal shifting to glass, to light, to nothing. He reached the figure and stepped through it. He found himself standing in a chamber, not on the Starseeker, not anywhere with walls. Just space, but the kind that bends around you when you try to look at it. Shapes floated past him, echoes of places he'd been. The training center on Titan, his bunk in the outer Sol shipyard. A woman's face, her name just out of reach. A child's laugh. Then they were gone, replaced by pure light. The white figure reappeared. It looked like him now. Same posture, same face, same eyes, but not him. Aeon didn't speak. He reached out. The figure reached back. Their hands touched and merged. He gasped awake, on the command deck, suit half open, helmet gone. Breath ragged, the ship was glowing, every wall, every surface, pulsing with soft white light. The ripple outside had solidified into a ring. A gate, or maybe a body. He didn't know anymore. He didn't need to know, because it was time. Time to let go. Time to become. He stood. The floor rose with him. The lights flickered like thought. He didn't walk to the escape pod. He floated, not physically, mentally. The pod opened as he approached, but he didn't enter. Instead, he touched the hatch, and the metal softened, became transparent. The ripple grew. It filled the sky, filled his eyes, filled his soul. The voice returned one final time. And Aeon smiled, because for the first time, he believed it. The Starseeker no longer felt like a ship. Its hallways no longer repeated in predictable patterns. Rooms connected to different rooms depending on which direction he entered. The gravity well beneath the engine room had split, once holding him firm, now pulling him sideways when he passed. Aeon stopped mapping the layout. It didn't matter anymore. The ship wasn't meant to be navigated. It was meant to be understood. He entered a maintenance tunnel near the life support core and found himself standing in the hydroponics bay. Except there was no hydroponics system aboard Starseeker. He had never requested one, never needed one. And yet, here it was. Rows of hanging plants glowing under purple light. No soil, no smell, just movement. Leaves shifting gently in a wind that didn't exist. He took a step forward. The plants turned toward him, slowly, like a field of heads rising to attention. Not threatening, just aware. He backed out, not running, just knowing he didn't belong there. He returned to the command cradle to find someone sitting in it. His breath caught. It was him, or rather, a version of him. Same suit, same posture, same white streak of hair above the left eye. But older. The figure turned slowly, eyes calm. Not surprised, not aggressive, just expectant.
"You're early,"
it said. Aeon said nothing.
"I didn't see anyone until day 12.
The figure added.
You're here on day 6. That's unusual."
Aeon took a slow step forward.
What is this?
The other him tilted his head.
"This is the reflection room."
I don't remember building it.
"You didn't."
The lights above dimmed slightly.
Then how is it here?
"You allowed it to be."
Aeon stood silently for a while, then said,
Am I going to die?
The other him smiled faintly.
"Number, but you will stop being you in the way you understand it.
That's death.
It's something else."
The viewpane flashed, briefly, revealing stars that pulsed and moved in spirals. Shapes flickered between the constellations, tall, thin, moving slowly like dancers in another dimension. Aeon looked up at them.
I saw them,
He said.
before.
The other nodded.
They're always watching the first ones, especially the ones who open the door too fast.
I didn't mean to.
Doesn't matter. The ship remembers.
He blinked, and the chair was empty again. Just his reflection in the glass, staring back. Aeon didn't speak, didn't move, but the reflection did. It raised its hand, pressed it against the inside of the glass. He stepped forward, closer, their palms aligned. He expected it to feel cold, but it felt warm. Software. The glass melted beneath his touch, and he fell through. He stood in the same room, but different. The lights were amber. The air smelled of copper and ozone. And across the room, 5 versions of himself stood, equidistant, surrounding him in a perfect circle. Each one was dressed slightly differently. One in the original Earthfleet uniform, one in a civilian flight suit, one with no suit at all, just skin, cracked and covered in glowing veins, one with no face, and one smiling, too wide, too calm.
Pick one,
said a voice from nowhere. Aeon turned in a slow circle.
Pick what?
a path.
The voice said.
Each one is a future.
What happens if I don't choose?
They will choose for you.
He pointed to the one in the Earthfleet uniform.
Solid. Predictable.
He said. The others disappeared. The chosen version stepped forward.
Wrong answer.
It whispered. And then he screamed. A flash of light. And silence. He woke in his quarters, soaked in sweat. No sign of burns, no wounds, just a faint humming sound in the air vents, different from before. Deeper. More layered, like chords played on an alien instrument. He stood up and walked to the viewport. The ripple outside was gone. In its place was a black sphere, perfectly round, floating dead center in his line of sight, not moving, not turning, just waiting. He heard it then, the voice. He placed his hand on the glass.
I'm not ready.
And for the first time, he realized he wasn't the only version of himself here. The black sphere didn't move. Aeon sat cross-legged in the center of the bridge, eyes unfocused, hands resting lightly on his knees. The ship around him was still. No hum, no light shifts. Just silence, and the floating orb outside, framed perfectly in the viewport like it had been waiting to be found. He had stopped tracking time. The countdown was gone. The clocks refused to display numbers. The only rhythm left was his heartbeat. Even that felt borrowed. He'd begun hearing breathing, faint, slow, deep, echoing through the walls like a great sleeping thing surrounding him. But it wasn't coming from the ship. It was coming from within. He stood and approached the viewport. The sphere remained featureless, a complete void in space. And yet, he could feel something behind it. A crowd, not loud, just present, watching.
Alex.
He whispered, out of habit, out of hope. No reply. Instead, a soft light blinked on at the far end of the bridge. A door that hadn't been there before. Rectangular, backlit in violet. No mechanisms, no control pad, just open. Aeon stared at it. His hands were already moving. The hallway beyond the door didn't match the ship. Different dimensions, wider, colder. The walls shimmered like fabric soaked in oil, changing color as he passed. His footsteps didn't echo. Instead, they made different sounds each time, a soft drip, a chime, the crunch of gravel. There were no lights, and yet he could see. A new chamber opened ahead. Inside, mirrors. Dozens, all standing upright, arranged in concentric rings. But the glass wasn't normal. Each mirror showed a different him. Not reflections, perspectives. In one, he was older, scarred, missing an arm. In another, he wore ceremonial robes, eyes glowing with a faint blue light. In another, he was screaming, on fire, slamming his fists against the glass. He turned in place, slowly. The mirrors rotated with him. Not passively. They followed. One by one, the mirrors blinked dark, until only one remained lit. He approached it. Inside, himself, but not moving. Frozen, mouth open in mid-sentence, hand reaching out, eyes wide. Aeon stared for a long time. Then the glass melted, and the version of him stepped out, not hostile, not surprised, just tired.
You got farther than I did.
The other Aeon said. Aeon took a step back.
What is this place?
A fold
The other answered.
between probabilities. The ship let you see it early.
Why?
Because you're going to make the choice this time.
What choice?
The other him exhaled, slow.
To finish the merge.
I never agreed to merge.
You did.
The other Aeon said.
Every version of us always does. It's just a matter of when.
The walls rippled. The mirrors vanished. Aeon stood in an empty void. The other one with him,
They're not what you think.
the other said.
Not aliens, not gods, not higher beings.
Then what are they?
Reflections. The structure doesn't exist in space. It exists in decisions. It connects every version of you who ever came close to understanding. And when enough of us align,
We merge.
Aeon finished. The other nodded.
it's how the drift learns. It doesn't create. It collects.
Aeon clenched his fists.
What happens to me if I refuse?
The other one tilted his head.
We don't know.
No one's ever said no.
Oh, they have,
He said.
but they didn't stay.
Where did they go?
The other Aeon didn't answer, just slowly stepped backward and dissolved into static. Aeon was alone again. But not for long. The mirrors returned, this time fused into one enormous pane stretching upward into darkness. In it, himself, but shifting constantly. Young, old, grinning, broken, blind, laughing, crying, all flickering like frames in a reel. He stepped closer, the image stilled, and said his name. He flinched.
Are you the drift? You don't need me.
Aeon laughed once, dry.
I'm barely holding together.
The light dimmed. The mirror cracked. Aeon stepped back. The ship around him returned in layers, the bridge reforming like a waking dream. He collapsed into the command cradle, chest heaving, mouth dry, eyes wide. The black sphere outside remained, still waiting. The bridge was cold. Aeon sat hunched in the command cradle, sweat beading along his brow despite the drop in ambient temperature. The black sphere outside the viewport was unchanged, still perfectly round, still perfectly still, like a full stop at the end of an ancient sentence. He hadn't moved in an hour, not because he was tired, because he couldn't remember how. Every time he tried to stand, his legs felt unfamiliar, not numb, not weak, just wrong, too long, too light, not quite his. He looked at his hands. They responded, they flexed, but it felt like he was watching someone else control them. And he knew this feeling, because he remembered being someone else. The mirror chamber hadn't vanished after all. It had just moved behind his eyes. Now, when he blinked, he saw flashes, scenes that belonged to lives he never lived. In one, he stood at the edge of a massive crater, surrounded by machines shaped like trees, all humming in harmony. In another, he was underwater, breathing without gear, staring up at a ring of glowing lights in the deep. And in one that came more often than the others, he was old. Sitting in a stone room, hands wrinkled, back bent, writing the words, "I was the last one who said no." Aeon didn't remember doing that, but he remembered the regret that followed. The black sphere pulsed once. A ripple passed through the Starseeker. Software like a sigh. He felt the air shift around him. The ship's metal bones groaned, and for a moment the gravity flipped sideways, just long enough for his body to tilt against the restraints. Then it stopped. He checked the nav console. Still dead. No diagnostics, no inputs, but a new log had appeared. No timestamp, just a title. Memory loop, initialization complete. He accessed it. The screen flashed, and he was no longer on the ship. A desert stretched out around him. Crimson sand, pale sky. A single moon overhead, cracked, bleeding light from a gash that split it in half. Aeon stood barefoot, wearing clothes that didn't exist. He took a step. The sand didn't shift. It remembered. Each footprint stayed visible, long after he moved on. A shape rose in the distance. A tower, thin, spiraled, made of something between glass and bone. He approached. The door opened. Inside, shelves, books, thousands, each labeled with his name. He pulled one out at random, opened it. Inside were thoughts he hadn't had yet, fears he hadn't spoken aloud, people he hadn't met, but missed desperately. He dropped the book. The tower collapsed. He blinked, back on the bridge, gasping, nauseous. Time had skipped again. 3 hours missing from the internal clock. The black sphere had moved closer, now filling half the viewport. And in its surface, a reflection. Not his. The bridge, yes, but occupied. 2 figures, one in his seat, one standing at the far console. Neither noticed him. They moved slowly, speaking, but no sound came through. He watched for minutes. They never looked his way. He raised a hand, and the reflection raised a knife. Not at him, at the other. The screen flickered, went dark. He sat in silence. Then, the voice.
What?
He leaned forward, hands gripping the armrests.
I want out. What happens if I stop thinking? I never authorized any of this.
He stood. It felt heavier this time, like walking through syrup. He made his way to the cryo vault, still sealed, but warm. He opened it. Inside were 5 pods, 4 empty, 1 full. He wiped the glass, stared inside. His own face stared back. Peaceful, eyes closed, breathing steady. He checked the readings. Pod active, vitals nominal, occupant, Commander Aeon Sol. His mind fractured.
Then who am I?
He dropped to his knees, head in hands. The hum in his skull was now a roar. But he didn't scream. He laughed. Software broken.
You already replaced me.
The lights on the bridge shifted. Soft gold, then blue, then white. He rose, walked back, sat in the cradle, watched the black sphere split open. Inside, nothing, just light. A spiraling void. A thought so massive it had no shape, and it was waiting, not to invade, not to explain, just to merge. Aeon leaned back, closed his eyes, and whispered.
Begin.
He expected light. He expected warmth. Instead, Aeon awoke in the cargo hold, alone, cold, and staring at a crate that didn't exist. He sat up. The crate was labeled in Earthfleet Standard, dust-covered, dented. His name was etched into the side. Aeon Sol, Mission 0. That wasn't possible. There was no Mission 0. He was only ever assigned to Starseeker. He approached the crate and reached for the latch. The moment his fingers touched the edge, the room blinked. Not the lights. The room. The floor warped, the ceiling curved. And suddenly, he wasn't in the cargo bay anymore. He was on Earth. The light was too warm. Real gravity pressed down on him. He stood on a steel balcony, overlooking the inner compound of Earthfleet's orbital academy. There were people, laughing, training, running drills in the fields, and Aeon, younger Aeon, stood at the railing, alive, whole, no white streak in his hair, no burn on his palm, no hum in his skull. Just a cadet, a dreamer, the version of himself before the drift. He leaned on the railing beside him. The younger Aeon didn't look over, didn't acknowledge him. He didn't have to. This was memory, or a copy of it, and he was being forced to feel it again. A voice came from nowhere.
This is punishment. What does that mean?
Aeon watched the younger version laugh at something a fellow cadet said. The face looked lighter, not innocent, but unburdened. Then the field shattered. He stood in a hallway, one he hadn't seen in decades, the one outside his mother's hospital room, a memory he hadn't visited since the funeral. But now, it was real. He could smell the cleaning solution, hear the low beep of life support, feel the ache in his knees from standing too long. He walked forward, reached for the door handle, stopped. He remembered what came next, the last words, the moment she didn't recognize him, the sound she made before the machine flatlined. He stepped back.
I don't need to see this again. I remember it.
The hallway darkened. The door disappeared. He was floating again, this time in orbit. Not aboard Starseeker, just drifting. In front of him, Earth. Bright, whole, turning slowly beneath him. He reached out. The planet pulsed, and with it, his chest. He felt something crack open inside, and something fill the space. Not pain, not peace, but weight. Responsibility. The thing he left behind. The thing he forgot when he signed up for a ship with no return. He opened his eyes. Back on the Starseeker bridge, the black sphere was gone. So was the ripple. So were the stars. Just white now. Total white. The kind of white that erases outlines, depth, and sound. He floated in the cradle. Not strapped in, not anchored, but still. Seated. Something held him there. He turned his head. Behind him, a wall of mirrors. But this time, not showing other versions of himself. They all showed him. Now, just slightly different. In one, his hands were metal. In another, his mouth never moved, only his eyes. In another, he was younger, but his voice echoed from the ship. And in the last one, he was gone. Only the suit remained. Empty. He stood, walked to the mirror where he was missing, touched it. It didn't ripple, didn't respond. But he felt known, like something on the other side had been waiting for him to choose this. The silence pressed in, then the voice. "Why show me this?" He pressed harder. The glass cracked. The hum returned, louder, layered with choral echoes. He heard names. His, others, the cadet, the explorer, the sleeper, the echo. He whispered, "What am I now?" The voice answered in layers. He gasped awake. In the cryo-vault, the sealed pod was gone, melted. The wall behind it torn open, not physically, but conceptually. Like the idea of wall had been erased, he stepped through and entered himself, not his body, his memory, all of it, as if the ship had always been him. And he had only just remembered it. The transmission came at 0341 ship time. There was no build-up, no sensor ping, no EM spike, no advance warning. Just static, then a voice.
Starseeker, this is Sol Command. Repeat. Starseeker, this is Sol Command. Do you copy?
Aeon dropped the tool in his hand. The clatter rang out through the AI core, sharper than it should have been. The kind of sound that wakes people from bad dreams, the kind that doesn't belong in silence. He turned slowly toward the nearest console. It was dark, but the voice continued.
Commander Sol, if you're receiving this, acknowledge transmission. We are locking coordinates. Your vector appears stable.
He reached for the comm panel, touched the receiver. Felt heat. It couldn't be Earth. He knew that. Sol Command had gone dark 6 years ago. There was no vector, no relay chain out this far. But the voice, it was real. He recognized the cadence, the calm formality. It even used the last known call sign for Starseeker. He activated the channel.
Sol Command,
He said, voice cracking.
this is Commander Aeon Sol, receiving you.
The response was immediate.
Acknowledged, Starseeker. You're early. We didn't expect signal contact for another 4 days. You must have jumped.
He swallowed.
No, I didn't.
Copy. No matter. Recovery window just opened. Can you confirm your condition?
Aeon stared at the panel. Something was wrong. The voice was too clean, too consistent. No drift, no decay.
Send authentication,
He said.
Standard A7.
A pause. Then
Hold, please.
static. Then the same voice returned.
Authentication. Memory loop initialized. Integration at 92%. Host stability. Pending. Countdown suspended.
His blood ran cold. The panel pulsed with a pale white glow. Not green. Not Sol Command. The voice wasn't coming from Earth. It was coming from inside the ship. He backed away. The lights flickered. The console screen displayed a message, "We remember your home. We speak in familiar voices. So you'll keep listening." He smashed the panel. It didn't break. He screamed. The scream didn't echo. He ran, through corridors that bent between thoughts, past doors that whispered his name. The ship reshaped around him, faster now, no longer mimicking the Starseeker's design. Now it looked like memories, hallways from his childhood, stairwells from the academy, a forest trail he hadn't walked in 20 years. Each turn led deeper inward, and at the center, a room, circular, diamond soins, and on the far wall, a screen, a real one, not made of memory, and on it, Earth. Blue, whole, spinning, alive. He dropped to his knees. Tears came before the thought. The weight of it collapsed his chest. There it was. The home he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. The home he thought was gone. And a voice, not the mimic one, not the drift, came through.
Aeon, is that you?
His head snapped up. It was her, Riva, his sister. Dead 15 years.
If you can hear me, we got the pulse. We tracked it to your trajectory. You're not lost.
His lips trembled. The room spun. She kept speaking.
We're going to try and bring you back. You're not alone. Aeon, listen to me. You're not alone.
He reached out, touched the screen, and it passed through. He was standing in a city. Earth's air filled his lungs. He fell to his knees in the grass, felt the warmth of sun. He looked up. Riva stood there, smiling. Real. Whole. She stepped forward, knelt.
Do you remember this?
She asked. He couldn't speak, just nodded.
This is where we used to walk after Dad died.
He looked around. It was perfect. The angle of the light, the curve of the bench, the way the wind touched the leaves. Exactly right. Too right. He looked at her.
You're not Riva.
She didn't flinch.
I'm what you needed.
He stood. The sky blinked, the grass turned grey, and the air thickened. The illusion shattered. He was back in the room. The screen was blank. He collapsed to the floor. The whisper returned.
You gave me a lie.
I didn't mean...
The walls melted. Back to metal. Back to ship. Back to silence. Aeon curled against the floor.
And whispered, then stopped pretending.
The hum ceased, and the drift spoke in its own voice for the first time.